Future Dana here. We're trying to reach 10,000 subscribers, and you can help us out by sharing the channel and clicking the subscribe button. And when we reach 10,000, we're going to do a giveaway. So if you want to know what that's about, help us out. Hi, Dana here. Welcome to Solo and Create. I'm glad you joined us today. And if you like what you see, be sure you click that subscribe button and hit the bell notification so you'll be notified when we do new videos. Also, we have a Patreon page with multiple tiers where you can support our channel in that way. And then on the Etsy shop, I have sewing kits for a lot of the tutorials here on the channel. For today's project, it is our last Christmas ornament for 2025 that we're making, and it is a pieced Santa. It's also a great scrap buster for those little pieces that you have left over. So let's get started. For our pieced Santa ornament, you're going to need the following fabric and supplies. You're going to need, and I'll put all the sizes in the description box. You are going to need a piece that is 6 inches long by 4.5 inches wide for the top for his hat. You're going to need a piece that is 1.25 inches wide by 6 inches for the brim of his hat. For his face, you're going to need a pink that is 1.25. I'm sorry, this one's 1.25. This one's 1.25, and everything will be 6 inches wide, and then the different lengths there. Then for the beard, that piece is 3.5 inches by 6. And again, I'll put all of those sizes in the description. And then for the back of the ornament, I just did a solid piece, and it is 6 inches by 9 inches. You'll also need some small beads for his eyes, and you just want those to be black. So you could, I used beads to make it more dimensional, but you could just do his eyes with a Sharpie or just hand stitch some eyes. Then you're going to need some yarn for his mustache, and that kind of creates his nose also when you tie it in a knot. And then you're going to need, if you want a bell on the tip of his hat, you could make a pom-pom also, but I'm going to use a bell. And you'll need a hanger. And then I'm going to use tacky glue and hot glue to make this ornament. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our backing to the side, because that's what we're going to need last, is we're going to piece all of our sections together. So you're going to start with his hat at the top. Then you're going to take the 1.25 inch white and put that at the bottom here. And we're going to stitch right across here to put these two pieces together. So I'm going to put a couple of clips on that. And then we're going to piece our face and his beard. So I'm going to put the pink right sides together. And both of my whites have kind of a tone-on-tone look to them. They have a design, but you could use solid white on those sections and it would be just fine. So we're going to go to the machine and we're going to stitch these together, this top unit and the bottom unit. Then I'm going to open up the pink and the white and stitch those two together to make our whole pieced section. So let's go to the machine. Now we're going to stitch these together, and I'm going to use the full width of my machine foot, and that makes it about a 1/4 inch seam. You don't want much wider than a 1/4 inch or your sections will be really, really skinny, and that will make them not look in proportion. So we're going to start here at the top and go all the way across. And I'm just going to take my next section, go all the way off the first, lift my presser foot, insert my second one to just conserve a little bit of time and thread. Now I'm going to cut these two sections apart, and I'm going to just push my white back and open up my pink, and I'm going to put those two sections together, lining up my edges and stitching across there. Then we'll go back to the mat, open it up and press it. Now when we press these seams on the back, we're going to open them up, and I like to open them and kind of run my finger down them. And typically we would press those seams to one side, both together, like in quilting, but we are going to open them up on this project. And that will kind of reduce the bulk, but it also makes it lay a little flatter too. So you just want to run your iron down those seams, getting them nice and flat. And again, I like to take mine, open them up and kind of run my fingernail down them, and that helps them open and lay flat before I press it with the iron. And then I always flip mine over to make sure that this is nice and flat. Put my thread here. Now we're going to take and we're going to flip it over. Actually, sorry, we're going to put it right side up. We're going to take our backing and put it on top. And my backing has kind of a wave, and I want to make sure that this wave is going this direction, not that direction, because I kind of like the look of that better. So we're going to put it there, and then we're going to clip it in place. Then I'm going to take my pattern piece. I'm going to move this out of the way. And what I need to make sure is that I get it lined up with the white on his hat, the pink for his face, and the white for his beard. So I'm going to kind of push that to the side like this, and I'm going to kind of put it in the middle like this. And the pattern will be in a link will be in the description. And I'm just going to kind of make sure that I can see this seam line goes about right there. This seam line for his face. So here's the pink. And you may have to adjust it just a little bit based on your seam allowances. And then I have my white. And that looks pretty good to me. Then I'm going to pin that in place. I think it shifted on me a little bit, so let's double check it again. Push my backing fabric. And the reason I'm not cutting my piece, my Santa out and then doing my backing is you would have this long edge on the bias and it would tend to stretch on you. So I found it's just a little bit easier to kind of put it in place here, pin it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take a pencil and we're actually going to draw around that pattern onto the back of our fabric. So if your fabric was dark colored, I'm just using a number 2 pencil and I can see that line. If I was using a dark fabric, I would need a chalk pencil so I could see it, because this is actually going to be our stitch line. Come down here, draw all the way around it. And I like to just, before I unpin it, take and make sure that I can see all my lines. Now we're going to go to the machine and we're actually going to stitch on that line all the way around. And we're going to leave, I'm going to kind of make a mark, we're going to leave an opening right here on the side so we can turn this right side out on the top part. And I can kind of feel where that seam is. So I just want to make sure that it's on the top part of his hat. So we're going to start our stitching here and go all the way around and stop and leave this small opening right here. So let's go to the machine. Now remember, we are going to stitch right on this line that we drew. So I've lined up my needle in the center of my foot with that line, and we're just going to stitch all the way around, starting at our first open line and going all the way around. When you get to the tip here, you want to put your needle down and be sure that you rotate all the way around, and that'll give you a nice point for his beard. And then here at the top, I'm going to go across. And then back on my final side, and remember I'm going to stop at this second dash that I put to leave this small opening. And I'm going to back stitch there. Now we'll go back to the mat and turn it right side out. Now we've stitched all the way around on our Santa, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to turn him over, and I can see my shape now. So then I'm going to take and I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to leave about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to go all the way around. And up there at the top, you don't need to cut any closer than that. Turn him around. And then my opening I can see is right here. And I do want to leave a little bit of extra fabric there to turn in. So I'm just going to kind of go out and make a little bit more fabric there. So when I turn it in, it'll turn in a little nicer. And then keep cutting my 1/4 inch. Get the chopstick here. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to turn him right side out. And I like to go all the way to his beard, kind of grab that chunk and then pull him, because that's the biggest chunk you have. Now, if you wanted to make a bunch of these Santas, the first year I made him, I made a bunch. So I didn't make my pieced 6 inches wide. I did longer strips, and then I could stitch more and make more out of my sections. So I didn't have as much scrap. And we're going to make sure our corners all come out nicely with our chopstick, pushing gently so we don't rip our stitching. And we want to make sure that right here at our opening that fabric kind of turns in nicely and even. Clip our threads here. And then we're going to press it. And then to close our opening, I'm just going to do that by hand stitching it, because it's not a very large opening. And I don't really want a top stitch look on this. You could top stitch it if you prefer that. But I just kind of like it hand stitched. So I'm going to take my needle and thread, making sure my fabric is turned in the way I want it to. Start with my knot in the inside, and then I'm just going to whip stitch this opening closed. Like I say, it's just a small opening, so this doesn't take very long. And then I'm just going to tie a double knot on the back to secure it. All right, so now our Santa hat is all closed up. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to make the beard and the mustache and the nose. So I'm using this fuzzy yarn that I got at Dollar Tree, and I'm using a board that is about, let's see how wide this is, and it's just a piece of cardboard about 4 inches wide. And I'm going to wrap it around, kind of like if I was making a tassel, and I'm going to wrap it around, 10, 15 times. Depends on how bushy you want his mustache to be as to how many times you go around. That will probably work. And I'm going to cut it off. Then I'm going to cut a longer piece. And I'm going to feed it up through the middle. And I'm going to kind of tie that together so when I pull it off the board, it all stays together. And I'm going to do a double knot. And then that becomes part of his mustache sides. Slide it off. Oops. Doesn't look like I got it all. My tail's here. Tie it there in the middle, and I'm going to do a big knot here. I'm going to do that 3 or 4 times so it leaves a little bit of a bump there in the middle. Then I'm going to take my ends and I'm going to clip them. And you'll probably have to cut all the loops and then give his mustache a nice trim. Sure, I've got all my loops here. And do that on both sides. All right. And this fuzzy yarn does make a mess. So then I'm going to kind of find my center. And I'm going to put it on there, and it looks like I need to trim that quite a bit, but I'm actually going to hot glue it on there first. On my original one, I used a thin twine kind of stuff that you, like kite string, I think is actually what I used. And I did my strings longer and then tied a big knot in the middle to make that bump. But on this fuzzy yarn, that's really hard to do. So I'm going to hot glue it right here, just below where his mouth and nose would be. And I'm only going to glue that center for now. I'm going to kind of find my center and glue that in place. Then I can kind of come back and give him a trim, and I just want to make sure that I don't cut my fabric. I just want to trim my mustache and my beard. And the pointy fabric kind of gives you the shape that you're trying to go for. Again, just make sure you don't cut your fabric. Then I'm going to take my hot glue once I've got him kind of trimmed down, and then I'm going to put a little more glue on each side to kind of make those sides stay where I want them to. So I just kind of glued the bottom section of his beard, and the rest is kind of loose, but then that kind of makes it really fuzzy. Like I say, that fuzzy yarn makes a big mess. So then the next part, we want to add his eyes right here, and I'm going to use these beads. On my original one, I used little square. They are beads, but they're squares, which I thought were kind of fun. But on this one, we're going to use these kind of circle beads. And I want to see if I can find kind of 2 that match in diameter. Those look pretty good. And I'm going to use, because hot glue is so bulky, it would leave a bump. So I'm actually going to use my tacky glue to put his eyes on. And I found that if you put the dots where you want the eye, this also dries clear, but it doesn't leave as much bulk as hot glue. Put your dot and then put your bead on top and kind of push it down in there. Now he has some eyes. Then the last thing we want to do is we're going to take his hat and we're going to kind of turn it this way. I'm going to turn his hat and I'm going to hot glue that. You could stitch it if you wanted to, but I think I'm just going to hot glue it. And I just folded it over a little bit so that it looks like the top of his hat. And then I'm going to hot glue a jingle bell right here at the end. Again, putting my glue on first. Then putting my jingle bell right there in the top. It also looked really cute if you wanted to use a pom-pom. And the reason I didn't make his hat really pointy is when I made the original one, this was very hard to turn and get because you have a lot of bulk in there. And then it really was hard to get the jingle bell to stay because it didn't really have a good base. So I cut the top of his hat, squared off a little bit. And when you fold it over, it looks really cute. Then the last thing you want to do is take your hanger, and you want the hanger to go kind of right here. And I'm going to use a really wide needle to kind of help poke that through because you are kind of going through some seams there. And by putting it right there in the top of his hat, it makes him kind of hang even when you hang him up. You could also stitch a piece of ribbon on there if you wanted to, and make your hanger that way. So now our Santa is complete. And if you leave a comment telling us if you used a kind of multicolored fabric on the back, or this one, I made it match more of his hat, or you could use red for his hat and blue for your back, because it just gives it another little detail right there. So our project is complete. I hope you liked today's project, the Peace Santa. And if you make one, be sure you comment below on what fabrics you used. So see you in the next one.